Often, the path less traveled is the most beautiful. Don't go away. Hello, friends, and welcome to Fat Guy Productions. I am Paul, coming to you as always from beautiful Las Vegas, Nevada. I was looking for a casting in my stash for this video when I saw this poor little Hot Wheel buried in a bunch of other cars in the back corner. I could just see enough of its sad little roof peeking out, and it made me want to pull it out and give it a quick look. What I found was a pretty beat up Mighty Maverick. Now, this car immediately spoke to me. I loved its lines. I was really into the feeling I got looking at it. Sort of reminded me of someone who is just tough as nails, just stout and stocky like a tank. And it just screamed out that nothing would stand in its way. I could literally see why this little casting was dubbed the Mighty Maverick. I knew I had to rescue this casting. Little did I realize that my immediate affinity for this car would face a real test, as this car tried its very best to break my spine. This casting, in fact, has supplanted the Porsche 917 as the most frustrating build I have ever faced. Let's get to work. So here's my Mighty Maverick, casting I really have never given a second thought about. Having pulled it out of my stash, though, has really opened my eyes to what a cool casting this is. Now, the car looks simple enough to build up, but looks can be deceiving. The metal base is sound. There is a problem with the front axle I'll have to deal with, but that's going to have to wait. The interior is missing the giant rear wing, so I'll need a new one of those. The glass is actually very good, the hood is perfect, and the body looks like it just needs standard work. With the car apart, I'll prep the posts by running the Vix Bit over the end of the posts. This will simultaneously square off, clean up, and dimple the post for drilling. All that's left now is to just drill out the post, tap it for the screw so that I can put the entire thing back together when I'm done. This is where I'll encounter my first headache. The front post is super thin and just as short. Extreme caution is needed here. I was honestly holding my breath while drilling and tapping this post. In the end, I successfully got both posts prepped so I can move into the warm liquid goo phase. As you can see, for your enjoyment, I have brought forth a new jar of goo. You know, a new jar of goo is almost as good as a clean pair of underwear. So I left the casting in the goo overnight, and the next day I pulled it out of the goo and took it for a thorough wash job. The body's actually in way worse shape than I originally thought, and it's going to need some serious sanding and cleanup, and it's probably going to need a zinc bath too. As I'm sanding the car down, that's when I'll find headache number 2. The damned A-posts are broken. Now, I'm not sure how this happened. The roof is fine and the posts are still there and aligned, but sure enough, both pillars are broken clean through at the roof line. Now, this is going to just kill any notion I might have had about a Spectraflame paint job. And there's really just nothing for it but to gird up my loins and fix the posts. The posts are actually in pretty good shape except for these little fractures, so I just formulate a simple plan to use some gel control CA glue here. I'll kind of work it into the gap a little bit and then I'll push it together and hopefully it'll be nice and solid. With the CA glue now dry, I can go ahead and clean up around the repair. I'm going to scrape away excess CA and then I'll sand and file everything into shape before I move on. So I've given the car a coat of Tamiya Fine Primer and let it dry. This primer brings out the areas that will need more attention, so I can now do more sanding and cleanup, and then I'll put on a final coat of primer. The body's looking great, it's fully dry, so now I can start to put down some paint. I've decided to use Createx Candy 2.0 Caribe Blue over a base of Quicksilver. The Quicksilver is airbrush ready, so I just have to put some in the paint cup and lay it down. So with the base coat dry, I can now give this car its first of 4 paint jobs. Oh yes, you heard that right. I had to paint this car 4 separate times. I told you this casting was a real backbreaker. I mixed the blue with some balancing clear and laid it down. I was really digging on the color, and frankly, the whole project was looking really good. As I always do, after the paint was dry, I applied my clear coat, and I let the car start to dry. When I went back to check on it, I could see pinholes forming. Over the next several hours, it got worse, and I knew I was dead like a doorknob, so back into the stripper it went. The best I can figure is that there wasn't enough time between the layers of clear coat, and the sublayers were continuing to off-gas under the top layers, causing the pinholes. I was also concerned I was using a bit too much hardener. I kept both things in mind as I moved forward. In my second paint job, the blue had a couple of tiny specks in it that I just couldn't abide, and I felt that touching them up really wasn't viable. So I sanded the car and tried this time to paint it with Tamiya Royal Blue, which looked really nice. So after my third paint job, I clear coated the car and let it dry. Are you keeping count? Anyhow, successful for the time being. I can move forward. I'm going to focus on the glass now. It really is rock solid and just needs my basic treatment. Wet sanding, polishing with Flitz, and a swim in gauzy. I really can't say enough about how gauzy will elevate both your restos and your model builds. This stuff is magic. One of the biggest tips I can give you here is to have a safe place for the glass to dry, because invariably a piece of scamots will land on the wet gauzy and kill it. I use my onion saver, but any cover will do. And now for the base. Now you can see the front wheels are missing because of an axle problem, which I'll deal with later. For now, I'm going to tackle the tarnish on the base by plopping it into the limeaway and water mix for about a minute or two. After its bath, I pluck the base out and I'll give it a rinse. Then I'll hit it up with my brass bristle brush. The base is looking great, but I'm going to take it home with some Flitz and my rotary tool. After polishing and buffing, I'll protect it with Renaissance wax. So, after all the work on the base, I'm going to take some CA glue and use it to put the front axle back into the suspension board. At this point, I'm almost done. At least I thought so. I think everything is ready here, and so I start to put the car together. I drop in the glass and the new interior, and my thought was to put everything together, then roll the rear spoiler around and press the tabs on it into the notches in the rear glass. This was a giant mistake, and it's going to kill this project almost completely. I couldn't get the tabs on the fin to lock in with the rear window. Now, I tried everything I could think of, making things worse as I went along. The glass was getting scuffed up, the tabs on the spoiler were getting chewed up, and then the real disaster hit. In my struggle trying to get the spoiler in place, I failed to handle the car delicately enough, and I rebroke the repair on the A-pillars. Son of a bitch. I was so deflated. I walked away and I thought I was just going to give up on this car completely. Later, I went back and I made the decision I was going to try to fix it. I ordered a new glass, another interior, and I went to take the car apart, only to get another swift kick in my sore rump. When I went to take the car back apart again, The front post snapped off and stayed stuck on the end of the screw. Holy crap! When is the giant meteor going to just fall from the sky and land on me? Wow. So, after a small fight, I did get everything back apart, and before proceeding, I went on to fix the issue with the post. This way, if I couldn't fix it, I wouldn't find out later after I'd done a ton more work. Remember at the beginning when I mentioned how small the front post was? Well, having snapped most of it off, it's even smaller still. But there is just the smallest bit of meat left. So I super slowly and carefully drilled a bit deeper, hoping to not pop out through the engine. I pulled it off, I got it tapped out, and there's just enough there that the screw can bite in and lock the car back together. So, having met with a little bit of success, back into the warm liquid goo goes the body. So my new parts arrived and I decided to figure this whole glass spoiler thing out before taking another step. I made the notches in the glass a bit bigger, and I made the tabs on the spoiler a bit smaller. But the real trick here is to put the glass in first, then insert the spoiler tabs into those slots, and finally wrap the interior around and into place. It worked like a charm. So I went back to give the body its repair and fourth paint job. After pulling the body from the warm liquid goo again and giving it a wash again, I could focus on repairing the pillars. This time I used thin CA so it would flow into the brake, and then I locked it down with accelerator. I then coated everything with some thick CA to build up strength before again filing and sanding. To give you an idea of just how bad things were with this car, my normal amount of raw video runs about 45 minutes to an hour. The raw footage for this car is just under 3 stinking hours of footage. So the posts are fixed and I can now redo all the prep with sanding and filing the posts and primer, you name it. It was actually like starting out with a brand new build. I used the glass to make sure that the CA was sanded back enough so as not to impede the glass fitting back into the car at the end of the build. Now, don't ask me how I know to do this. The car's back in primer and getting some final sanding. Now, since I'm back at square one, I'm going to return to my original paint plan, and I'm going to use the Candy 2.0 Carib Blue. Because of that, I really want to make sure that the casting is smooth and beautiful. Paint job number 4 going on. Again, the Carib Blue is stunning, and this time it comes out perfect. I again will follow it up with clear coat, and this time I'm going to cut back on the hardener a bit, and I'm going to increase the time between the coats. These changes paid off, and I get a stunning paint job. Stunning, yes. End of my issues? Not so much. Following my new plan on how to put the glass and interior in, I can go ahead and begin to reassemble the car again. Despite my best efforts, the glass still fits a bit weird, so I'm forced to make a few adjustments on the fly. This wasn't too bad, and I was able to press forward. The rest of the plan is actually going pretty smooth, but I am disheartened to find that my gloved hand left a slight mark on the roof. Just one final punch to the face. Oh well, I'm going to have to polish the roof out. Now, it'll be fine, and it honestly is nothing compared to some of the other battles I've had to fight along the way. After some detail painting and polishing of the roof, the car is finally done. And honestly, it is a real stunner. This is now undoubtedly my favorite car and my most hated car all at the same time. Maybe now it's time to make friends with the Porsche. Well, friends, I know this was a long video, but I really felt you needed to see the entire story here, and I'm sure there's a lesson to be learned here. I'm just not so sure what that lesson is. There it is. I hope you loved it. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, click subscribe, and don't forget to smash the notification bell so you never miss out on seeing me get my butt kicked. As always, if you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. Well, That is more than enough fun for one day. Always remember, everything is going to be alright. Maybe not today, but eventually. Until next time, this is Paul from Fat Guy Productions, saying, be good.